Hello and welcome, beautiful people, to my channel. I am Victoria, your new best friend, and we're gonna learn so much today. I'm so excited. So excited I could just shake you through the camera. You are gonna get the opportunity to dip your toe in to this book. Because I want to be very clear here, all I did was read through it, take a bunch of notes to make it more digestible. I'm not gonna include everything from those 10 pages in this video. I just show some key points just so you can see if this is actually what you like. And if I get some love on this video, I'll create a longer version. If it's in demand, I'll create a longer version of all the notes I took. Just make a full summarized version of this book. I do still recommend you read it just to solidify the knowledge, but this is actually your opportunity to see if this is something you will find useful. So I'm so excited that you're here today. We're gonna learn a lot. Let's get started. Alrighty, the first thing I want to talk about is this chart here. Now, to understand it, I want to start off with definitions of the title, Atomic Habits, which I've actually never seen a writer do in a book. Here, let me just flip. Okay, I want to read them out to you. So, atomic, an extremely small amount of a thing, the single irreducible unit of a larger system. Now, habit, a routine or practice performed regularly, an automatic response to a specific situation. And I feel like this kind of gives us a base, but I feel the reason he named it atomic, as you read the book, you start to realize, oh, he really talks about small improvements, which is what we're going to be talking about today, small ways to build up good habits. But I do want to start off with this chart here. Now that you understand the definitions, we can move on. So this would be the results, this would be the time. The blue line represents what you would expect you building a new skill to look like. So this is you trying. And this is how you expect it to go with trying. But in actuality, it's this green line. He super duper emphasized 1% improvements every day. So he actually calculated and drew this chart in the book of what a 1% increase would look like and what a 1% decrease every day would look like. Even though we expect it to go the blue line, it actually goes within the green line, where it slowly compounds, compound interest. So it slowly compounds until it absolutely skyrockets eventually. It's like that theory of doubling, 1 cent per day and how much you'll get in 30 days. And it turns out to be like a huge sum of money. So it slowly compounds, even though it looks like a little bit in the beginning. But then we also have the option to get worse every single day. So this is what would happen if we were to get worse every single day. So first, it would be kind of a dramatic fall, and then it would be just a slow decline. So here, it dramatically goes, and then it's stable. And then it slowly starts to compound, and then it skyrockets. So it's funny how that's opposing. Now that we understand this, I want to talk about this area here, which he super duper emphasized. This is where people fail. This is the plateau of latent potential. See, because people expect results like this, but in reality they get them like this, you keep working, but there's just no results to show for it. It actually causes you to fall into a little bit of doubt. So it's so important to get through this plateau of latent potential. And now that I've explained it to you, you now know how to identify it, which gives you better tools to get through it. Now, we can't really change our habits unless we understand what we're actually trying to change. Because when you're trying to change a habit, you're trying to make it your identity, if that makes any sense. Now, I want to explain this here to you. This is going to be our goal-based thinking. If you guys can see the G. I don't have any professional markers yet. I'm literally using like the Crayola washable markers right now. So bear with me. This is the goal, and this is identity-based thinking. And then this is actions. Okay. We're trying to build this here. We're trying to build our identity. Because here, let me give you an example of just what a goal-based, kind of like an outcome-based thinking would look like, and then what would an identity-based thinking look like. So an identity-based, if I'm offering you a cigarette, you could say, no thanks, I'm not a smoker. That's an identity. I am not a smoker. I don't want your cigarette, I'm not a smoker. But there's also kind of goal-based thinking, where your response will be like this, hey, would you like a cigarette? No thanks, I'm trying to quit. So that's a goal. I am trying to quit. So instead of simply making habits our goals, we're trying to make it our identity. That is the goal. So generally, you're trying to move. Usually people start here. They start with goals, and then they try to move their way down into identity here. But instead, what we want to do is start in identity and then move it up here. How we do that is by reinforcing things that someone with this identity would do. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what would a runner do? They would probably start buying some sports clothes. They probably have like certain running shoes. They'd probably do research on this a little bit. And then maybe once you have these tools, not that you need these tools, but they would probably like go on a walk. They probably go on walks. They probably do stretches. They probably do some type of proper nutrition. So you start to research and think how this identity would behave. And then you start copying those behaviors, which then copying those behaviors automatically simply turns into action. And once it turns into action, you automatically obtain your goal. But it's much harder to work from goals into action, into identity, because you're trying to convince yourself. But when it's your identity, it's already part of you. And by continuously making these steps to confirm that it's your identity, every single step you take confirms that this is your identity now. You encourage your brain. You convince your brain that this is you now. And because it's easier to convince yourself that this is you now, all these things automatically happen. Now, to be able to build good habits in general, you probably have to understand the components, which I know this looks a little filled, but we'll go through it. It's actually decently simple. So the habit starts with a cue. A cue is some type of visual representation, like something you see that cues it, even if you don't know that that's actually the cue. Like it could be seeing your running shoes, and then you pick them up, go running. That could be a cue. Seeing your water bottle, that's a cue. So then that moves into a craving. I guess not everyone loves running, but for example, a cue. You see a bag of chips. You see the bag, and then you start to crave the bag. Then you want to respond. So you respond, and then it's opening the bag, responding, eating it, then getting the reward. But this is what we would call, this right here is what we would call the problem phase. Because this is where our issue is, right? We see the cue and we're still craving it. So we still haven't attained anything. We're just recognizing that we want something. This is the solution phase. This is where we, solve our problem. And now how do we either make a habit out of this system, and how do we unmake a habit? If you're doing something you do not like, if you have a habit you do not like, how would you break that habit and create a good one? So we're going to talk about both those things. So this would be the good habit. We'll find a green marker. And then I have a pink one. So this is how to make a good habit. And then this is how to fix a bad one. So how do we go about making a good habit? So first, in terms of cues, you'd probably want to make the habit as obvious as possible. You'd want to see your running shoes to go running. In terms of chips, you'd want to make it as invisible as possible. You probably want to put it in a cabinet, somewhere where you don't see it, right? So that you don't later get the craving, which we can make unattractive. So how to make the item as unattractive as possible. And then here you'd want to make the activity as attractive as possible. So like buying yourself some new shoes. Maybe here you can make chips unattractive by buying cheap chips or chips you don't like. So you only use the chips when your friends come over, something like that. Come up with something creative. Sorry, the markers are showed up because I'm wiping it away with sanitizer. I will get better markers. Bear with me. Here, green marker. Okay. So now that we have our problem phase right here, you want to make it obvious, you want to make it attractive to do, and then you also want to make it as easy as possible. Don't put your shoes somewhere like difficult to see, to find. You want to put your shoes by the front door just so you can grab them and go. You want to make it as frictionless as possible. The more friction there is, the less we want to do something. As humans, our minds have been simplified from the very beginning ages to make everything as easy as possible. That's how we're built, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can be bad in this world, in this super stimulus world we're living in today. So you want to make it as easy as possible. Now, when it comes to bad habits, obviously you want to make it as difficult to do as possible, the opposite. Now, when it comes to having it satisfying, you want to make it as unsatisfying as possible. Now, I know that I'm giving some examples, but in the book there are slightly more detailed examples, which I would be happy to go over if you were interested in having specific examples and really, really talking about this chart here of making it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying, invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying to do. We could definitely talk about that. Let me know in the comments if you want a longer version with more examples on this, but this is where we'll leave it for now. Let's get on to actually some methods that you can use to implement all of this. Okay, first method that I think is like the most crucial is the people you hang around. And it was actually Solomon Asch asked, I don't know how to say it, man. If you want, look him up. He did this study that I want to reiterate this statement of mine that I just said, that the group of people you hang around actually matters. So what he did was he brought in a study group. And what they would do is they would show them these two cards. And they would ask them to match this line length to one of the lines on here. Which it's pretty obvious that it's this one and this one. I hope it's obvious by my drawing. I hope. And first he would bring in one person and ask. And they would obviously identify it. Then there would always be one person that was here for like an experimental purpose. They didn't know what was going on for the experiment, and then the rest were actors. So then he brought in one experimental person and one actor, and the actor would purposefully choose the wrong answer. They'd say like this line, for example, which is obviously not true. And when it was one person who disagreed, the experimental person was like, no, it's still these two. When it was two people, they would also still tell the truth. That, yeah, it's these two. Even when it was three actors, they would still say that, yeah, it's these two. They would say most of the time. But now when he decided to go ahead and bring in a big group of people to go and disagree with the experimental person, and as they saw, first they were looking at the first few and they were like, oh, like that's weird, right? But then after they saw one after the other, every single person go, almost all the people pointed at the same wrong line, even though in their head they knew it wasn't true. So the people around you, if they think a certain way that doesn't benefit you, like this wasn't true, but they still went with it. Monkey see, monkey do, not calling you a monkey. But it's so important the people you hang around and what they think and what they do. So if you want to change a habit, find a community. Join a community that thinks in like-minded ways that you would like to adopt. As you can see, this is a drawing of a cigarette. I should be Picasso. But I want to just also say that apart from having a community, which is important, you also need to reframe your mind. Because this is all still in your head, all these old ways of thinking. So we're going to take the example of smoking. Use it to your situation, apply it to your situation, use it as you will, but we're going to do this with smoking. So in the book, he explains that there was another writer who wrote another book, and he would use these ways of convincing the reader of the truth. because it's really just the truth that you're telling yourself. For example, in terms of trying to quit smoking, it was a book about quitting smoking. You think smoking is about relieving stress, but it's not. Smoking does not relieve your nerves, it destroys them. Which is true. You're not lying to yourself, you're simply acknowledging this truth. So every time you're trying to pick up a cigarette, every time you think about a cigarette, just acknowledging truths like this. You think you're quitting something, but you're not quitting anything because cigarettes do nothing for you. Little quotes like that, little self-talk, but actually like research truthful self-talk, because we're not just trying to gaslight ourselves into whatever. We're trying to tell ourselves the truth. I know you loved the last image, so I made another one. But no, realistically, we're actually going to be using it for another study to emphasize another point. This one is action over motion. And we're gonna explain this really quickly. So practice is better than thinking and theorizing. Motion is simply the planning phase, getting stuck in the planning phase, where you continuously, no, I don't want to do it yet, like I need to do more research. You continuously convince yourself that you're doing more research, which actually feels productive and it makes you feel like you're getting somewhere without the risk of failure. Oftentimes, motion is overdone. It gives us the idea that we're making progress without the risk of failure. Now, I just want to reiterate how important putting the reps in, actually going and doing and practicing. You'll learn more from practicing than simply from researching. Now, the reason I drew a camera, we're getting there. There was another study done on a photography class in university or college, I'm not sure. The professor divided the class into two groups. One of the groups was assigned, this was their final assignment for both groups. This group was assigned to take one picture through the semester, and this would be their final project. One picture, but of the highest quality. This group here, Group B will say, Group A, Group B. Group B will say, this professor assigned them to take 100 photos, and they would simply be marked on quantity. So the smart people here will see that this is a comparison between quality and quantity, right? And at the end of the semester, he took it and he marked all of it. And it actually turned out that the people who put in more reps, take a guess, the people who put in more reps actually had better quality photos. Because they took so many, because they thought they were being marked on quantity, they took so many and had so many to choose from that they learned along the way on how to make better photos, while these people only took one. So they didn't have the opportunity to learn. Do you remember when we mentioned identity-based habits? That we want to start here in the middle and then work our way out? Part of this is being the type of person who shows up. Now, in this book, they talk about the 2-minute rule, which talks about, for example, we'll take running. You put your shoes on, get dressed, you go outside, and you run for 120 seconds. You run for 2 minutes, and then go back inside. You do that same thing the next day. Then you do that for the 3rd day, the 4th day. Do it for a week. Do it for however long you feel you need to. And eventually, you'll build this habit of being the type of person who shows up, which again will reinforce your identity. So we're killing 2 birds, 1 stone. Those were some of my most important takeaways from the book in general. Now, we didn't even cover all the notes. We're literally only on page 6, and I didn't cover everything from all the other pages. So there's a lot more depth into this. If you'd be interested, go ahead and comment. I'm so willing to put out a longer version. Make sure you hit the subscribe button too and the notification bell so that you don't miss it. I'm a pretty new account, so congratulations on being here first. I'm so excited that you're here, and I'll definitely see you in the next one.